Hi, I'm Candice Michel, and this is Our Community. Today I have the distinct pleasure of having my two favorite women joining me, Dr. Bethany Michel. And Bethany, could you tell us what your credentials are?
Certainly. So I am the director of the Child, Adolescent, and Family Division at the DBT Centre of Vancouver. That is where I do my clinical work.
And that Vancouver is in British Columbia.
That is in British Columbia, Canada. And I am also a continuing sessional lecturer in both the Department of Psychology and the School of Applied Child Psychology in the Faculty of Education at the University of British Columbia. And so I teach courses on mostly graduate courses and then some undergraduate courses as well.
So what is a sessional lecturer?
So a sessional lecturer is the University of British Columbia, UBC. It's their term for someone who it's essentially like an adjunct professor, but they just have different terms for people who work different amounts. It just means I've been teaching straight through. Okay. It just means I teach every term.
Okay, yep. Great. So that's one of my guests. My other guest is Diana Carter, who I absolutely adore having on this show. And she's the executive director of Brookings Core Response. It's so easy to say that.
Just a lot less words.
It's a lot less words, absolutely.
Fair.
And our topic today is oppositional behavior, which I am fascinated about because it does start really early with children.
Absolutely.
That oppositional behavior. Yep. And when we were talking before about it, Diana, it extends into adulthood. I mean, that is what basically policemen are dealing with.
Well, I mean, a lot of people in social work and law enforcement and emergency rooms and things like that deal with a lot of oppositional behavior. And it does stem from childhood, a lot of it. And then I think we see a lot of it in adults in the work that we do because of the various traumas that they've been through as a child or, a teenager or early adult.
Yeah. And some of these traumas, like these aren't even necessarily trauma with a capital T. There are those traumas, but we have just sort of like consistent, chronic, poor interactions with other people in the community that starts even in the classroom. It can start honestly in the classroom in like preschool. And so you have kids who are maybe a little bit more emotional and maybe a little bit more externalizing. And so they're less likely to just like turn inward and just sort of like fuss in their own minds with their stuff. As they become elevated, they become upset about things, they're going to express it. And the kids who express it are often, early on, probably because of socialization, they're often boys. We can have kids of all genders doing it, but you see a lot of boys in preschool and early childhood settings, and they're reacted to as if they are a problem. Right? And so although other kids may be having the same sort of emotional responses to things or similar emotional responses, they aren't externalizing them in ways that are considered disruptive, and quote unquoting disruptive for the rest of the kids. And so it's very easy to get pegged as a troublemaker. And then you throw race into it and forget it. Like race and ethnicity, suddenly, if you're white, you're more likely to get, services. If you're any shade of brown, you're more likely to get identified as a problem, right? And so, but you get pegged pretty early, and then that's just the reputation you have at school. And then once you're in grades, teachers sort of pass on information like, okay, who are the tricky ones? So you have this basically as an identity, this disruptiveness, oppositionality, defiance, we'll call it. And I'm going to say that in the field, in child psychology, child clinical psychology, there are many of us who are not, like we consider the disorder, oppositional defiant disorder, kind of a like it's descriptive of behaviors, but there's so many different reasons for those behaviors that it's like,
it feels like a situational diagnosis.
It's a situation. Yes. It's so situational.
That's what it looks like to
exactly.
Yeah, and there's definitely it mimics so much the behaviors in adulthood. However, we treat adults a lot different. Not that we treat children the best all the time, especially males going through this system, but the more and more they get pegged as a troublemaker, the more our lack of capacity within the systems show, and that lack of capacity tends to drive these worst behaviors because they don't get the support they need. So there's a lot of reasons for that behavior from an early childhood standpoint, and then we just don't have capacity within our systems to actually support people through those things, and so we kind of set them up for failure in some ways. And,
Absolutely.
And then, a lot of people go through the system, jails, institutions, all the things.
Yeah.
I mean, when you even look at just, families, a lot of parents, well, most of us, got no education about what being a parent actually was or how to foster your child and how to make life good for them and what was important. I mean, there was none of that. You make it up, right? You just make it up as you go along, and it's probably not really great for the kids because we don't know. We don't know what their stages are and what they need.
Yep. There's no, there's no handbook. There is no handbook. There's a lot of handbooks, actually. There's too many handbooks.
Yeah.
So that's not the problem, is that there's no handbook. It's just that there's too many handbooks. And so there's, if there's 2 billion parents on the planet, there's 2 billion different types of parenting styles.
Right.
And so, parenting classes, especially some, ones that are best practice and have gone through peer study, peer review, those types of parenting classes, I've been through some of those myself. When I went to treatment, they were required. You have to, when you're in drug and alcohol treatment, you have to go through parenting classes usually if you have an open DHS case. And I remember thinking even then, like, why didn't we get these before? This would have prevented so many things.
Yes.
So many things.
And so, again, lack of capacity within our systems to be able to help us and support us. I didn't even get breastfeeding support for the first week or so with my first child. So.
Yeah.
I don't think I did.
No.
Yeah.
But, I'll jump in about the parenting piece because there's also, so I do a lot of work with parents in DBT. So DBT is Dialectical Behavior Therapy.
And explain that just a little.
So it's like a lot of people know of CBT, Cognitive Behavioral Therapy, and it's just your basic, like, change your cognitions, change your behavior, your emotions will change your actions, blah, blah, blah. It's very straightforward. It's probably the most widely accepted treatment approach. So what DBT does is it was essentially developed for more emotionally reactive kids. Actually, it wasn't developed for kids. It was developed for adults, but it has since been adapted to teenagers and even, so there's DBT for children, and that's for 5 to 12-year-olds. And so I'm trained in the 5 to 19 is what the adult age is in British Columbia. And so, like, we can see adults, but what we're doing with these kids is we have to work with the parents because, again, the parents are reinforcing all sorts of behaviors at home that make it nearly impossible if you're trying to shift things with the kid directly and it's still being reinforced at home. It's impossible to get those changes. So one of the things that happens is we'll have a lot of parents come in with highly disruptive, highly dysregulated kids. These are kids who are engaging in self-harm. They are suicidal. They're having eating disorders. Our younger kids tend to be more disruptive and more aggressive. A lot of outbursts, a lot of aggression, a lot of difficulty managing their emotions. And so there's sort of like 2 ways that people have dealt with the parenting of that kind of behavior so far. One is like your old school, I'll
show you.
Exactly. And a lot of the parents who I work with come from that sort of a stance, like, it was good enough for me, blah, blah, blah. And I will say, like, yeah, it was good enough for you, maybe. Whatever.
That's debatable.
Maybe.
But
exactly.
We'll just accept that it was. I can't say.
Yeah.
It doesn't work for your kid.
Right.
And so
Clearly.
a regular CBT parenting is great for many kids. It is not great for this particular group of kids who are highly sensitive. And in fact, a lot of people make fun of like the whole, this is gentle parenting. I don't think people really understand gentle parenting, and it's not a technical term. So I'm not involved in the gentle parenting movement. What I am involved in, though, is the DBT approach to working with these highly reactive kids who are, again, they're engaging in all of these behaviors because they don't know how to manage their emotions, and so So there is a little bit of a difference even when you get into parents who are well trained. Like you were probably trained in a CBT mode, which is fantastic and wonderful for most kids. When you get to the kids at the sort of like edge of, the bell curve in terms of behavior, more difficult behaviors, then you're looking at a different approach because these tend to be highly, highly sensitive kids, highly reactive kids who may internalize and or externalize. But we're looking at a really different approach that is counterintuitive for a lot of your like suck it up buttercup parents because we're really trying to understand their perspective and be able to stand in their shoes. Like how does what they're going through, how does what they're seeing the situation as make sense? Because we essentially need to be coaches as parents to our kids. You can't be a coach if you don't know what it's like to play the game. And so you might not have that same personality type, that same emotional expressive type. You still need to stand in their shoes to see how do they see it. That doesn't mean that they can get away with everything. One of the things I'll say is like the rules you have, whatever family rules you have are fine. We don't care.
Now.
Like we will whatever your rules are totally fine. We can adapt that. It's really just about understanding your kids' perspective and helping them figure out how to navigate any sort of conflict or any emotion that's going to be super upsetting to them. We see the changes actually happening really fast when parents are willing to start seeing that perspective and they stop fighting us and stop looking at us like, yeah, my kid's pulling the wool over your eyes. I'm like, no, your kid is not pulling the wool over my eyes. Your kid is actually being understood, and we're helping find a different way of getting them there.
It's actually a lot of what I learned in parenting. And my kids went to a very therapeutic early learning center because we were, in fact, my mentor is the one who founded that. She passed away in 2021, but she helped me found the agency that we have now. And she really had a heart for children and child development. And even though she never ended up being a teacher or anything, she ended up running this little school. And it was, a natural playground, and there was a LCSW on site, and they had a lot of therapeutic environment and very low ratio of kids to adults. So it was really nice that they had great support there. And then they had a lot of parenting classes, a lot of education there, peer support. And then we went through PCIT, which is parent-child interaction therapy. Wonderful, wonderful. So, there's working with the kids, but you get like what Bethany's saying, you have to work with the adults because they're the ones, we've talked about this before about the how the synapses are firing in the brain and how that early interaction can dysregulate and change the way that those synapses are firing. And so it's that stimulus, every time that stimulus happens, it's going to fire that direction. So if the parents don't change the behavior, it's never going to change what's happening for that kid. And so that's what I learned in PCIT. And we did a year of it with one child and a year of it with another child. And at the same time, but a year with each. And then, so basically, I remember there was a lot to it, but essentially the foundation was building trust. And your child feeling empowered, but also feeling like they can trust you. And that comes with that connection, that deeper connection. And we do have, kids who have one child who had some pretty serious behavioral issues. And so we had some types of DBT therapy. I remember at the time, I don't remember how long we did that, but during PCIT, they had this activity where you do 5 minutes of special play. And so you have this bag of toys that you only bring out during that special play. And it's all stuff that's like, it's safe. There's nothing sharp, no scissors or anything. And it's all stuff that they could, play with without you having to stop them. Because the whole point is to not disrupt them, that they take the lead, that they, you mimic them. There's these skills that you have to learn and apply during that. And I remember the therapist would be on the other side of this wall with a mirror, and she could see us, but the child didn't know that she was there. And so, but I knew she was there because I would also wear a headset.
It's called the bug in the ear
therapy.
Oh, I love that.
So the therapist is talking.
Yeah. Yep. And so she, sometimes would, most of the time would listen a lot, and sometimes would give me certain, skills or things to say. And then we'd talk about it after. And I had my own individual sessions with her. But I remember showing up, and I didn't show up for, you guys both know all four of my kids, and Candice, much of my history with the kids and the struggles I've had with each of them. And so the one kid that you would think would be the the child we went there for was not the child. It was actually my most calm child, because when we went to treatment, you know, that was when he was safe enough to fall apart, and he really fell apart.
Yep.
And some behaviors came out, and we went, and I remember thinking like this same mindset was like, this is gentle parenting, and what is that? How was this going to stop them? They need to know who's in charge.
Exactly.
But I was never really abrasive with them growing up, but I had never seen any of this, so I had never had to.
Yep.
And so had I not had that at the time, I don't know how I would have responded, but it probably wouldn't have been as good.
Yeah.
So we did this special play, and one session is all it took for me to start seeing a change, immediate change.
Yep.
And I was like, all right, I'm in.
Yep.
I'm into the, and they didn't call it gentle parenting or anything like that, but, that does get a bad rap, because we think it's like, you know, now,
Right.
I don't hurt your brother with scissors.
Sad. We all have to stop everything we're doing. Like,
And they are really clear with you about like, hey, annoying behavior, ignore it.
Yep.
Dangerous behavior, intervene.
Yep.
You know, they're really clear about like how appropriate lines are drawn, and it's not about brushing things under the rug
at all.
No,
at all. It's really attending to it and deciding, like, remembering that your attention as a parent is reinforcing. And so the reason that we don't attend to annoying behavior, and in annoying behavior, we're talking about swearing at you, we're talking about being mean, we're talking about all sorts of
that's all ego.
nasty
It's
stuff.
all
Yeah.
ego. Put
and
it aside.
So if you can just like let them know ahead of time, hey, when you do blah, 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 the most loving thing I can do for you is not engage you.
Yeah.
Because if I engage you, it's going to make it worse for you. And so I'm just going to not engage.
Yeah.
And then as soon as they stop, you can engage again. The reason that with aggressive behavior that's actually dangerous, we have to intervene is because we don't want anyone to get hurt.
Right.
We remember, though, the attention actually does reinforce that. And so we want to be super careful about when we do that. And so we want a wide range of behaviors that we can just ignore.
And doing that harm reduction in the beginning that we do with adults, which is trying to take away all the things that might cause this behavior. And it's not to make the world a bubble around this person
At all.
but it's to be trauma informed and to say I know they get hung up on this thing. I'm going to keep this out of sight until it's time to bring it out, whatever it is. Maybe it's the Xbox. Maybe every time it's out, they just focus on it, they fixate on it. So putting it away is harm reduction. That's trauma informed.
Fascinating.
And a lot of times parents will say, like, well, you know, if they're going to live in the world, they have to be able to live with this, you know, these things that they're going to want to do that they can't do. They're going to have to live with not getting their needs met, blah, blah, blah. And I'm going to say, yeah, but maybe not in your relationship, in their most safe relationship. Maybe that's where they can learn, how do you deal with a situation where you're not going to get what you want, where that Xbox is just going to be staring at you, you're not going to be able to do anything about it. So in your home, you can help them learn, okay, how are you going to deal with that? Also, you're a freaking kid, right? So it's not going to happen at this age. So they don't need to learn at 13 how to deal with the big bad world. Like, they need to learn to deal with their big bad world.
They will learn to. They will face it. It's gonna happen
and
anyway.
their mistakes are going to teach them. Like, let their own mistakes teach them things, right?
It seems like when you look at the problem, that it is all about education. That if
buy-in, they have to believe you.
If you are taught, if you know how to be a parent, if you are educated in how to be a parent and what the difference is between how you were raised and how you then turn around, and that there not only is a difference, but can be. It's okay for there to be a difference. You don't have to do it the way your parents did it. It's not... They were not necessarily right, you know, to do it that way. And that there might be a better way, and it's okay to look to see what the better way is.
I feel like parents really buy in, sort of like you were saying, Diana, when there is the change that happens so quickly. And so I remember, for me, as a parent myself, I have a very emotionally reactive kid. I'm an emotionally reactive person. Like, we're right there, right? We're the same. And I remember when I was learning basically DBT and practicing it and trying to apply it to my parenting, what a difference it would make, because I would get emotionally reactive. My kid would challenge me or say no, and I would get mad, and I'd be like, yes, when I say goals, I'm the parent, blah, you can't rule me, whatever.
Right.
And I remember when I first started learning some of the skills that we use, which is just like, okay, let's bring it down. Is this an emergency? No. Like, okay, if my kid is swearing at me, if my kid's refusing to do whatever I'm telling them to do, is it an emergency? No. So I need to calm myself down so I can actually use any of the skills. I need to remember that, like, him challenging me is nothing, right? Like, I can just stand here. And as I started practicing my own emotion regulation of just like, here I am, nothing's happening, right? Even if he like tries to like front and like come at me, I mean, not like, not actually punching me, but like, let's say a little bit of a aggressive posturing.
Right.
So to show like, yeah, I'm in charge. If I do nothing, it actually de-escalates like that, like instantly.
Wow.
It just, and I would watch his face and just see it go from like, I'm going to fight you with every fiber of my being to like actually open to talking about what's going on and the sadness underneath that he had to stop doing whatever it was. He's a little kid, that he had to stop playing with whatever. And just like watching the emotions shift from what we call in the field like the secondary emotions, the ones that take over, for the primary emotions, which are underneath, which are like the sadness or the fear. What we see on the outside is we see aggression and anger, but that's not what's going on. And so if we can look into what's actually going on here, what's their experience? So they're fighting. This is the fight or flight. People often forget the fight part of that. They're like, flight is okay if you're anxious. Fight is not okay.
Right.
But if you remember, that's one of them. That's one of the main ones. And a lot of our kids do that. If you can remember, this is a fear reaction or a sadness reaction that they're trying to get control over a situation they don't have control over.
Control. Yeah. That's
it's
the big
all
word.
Control. It's
it
all
is
control. And so you just watch them come down. And again, if you're not like, see, sucker, like I'm in charge. If you just let them come down and actually try to understand their perspective, you can talk them through so many things with so much less conflict. And it seems like at first you're like, oh God, this is going to take an hour. And it takes like 10 minutes. You're like, what the hell? Like this would have taken so much long before.
And somebody would have been grounded. Something would have got taken away.
I grounded my kid at 5 years old. Okay. He didn't know what it was. And that's how I knew I had lost it. I was like, you are grounded. And he's like, Mom, what's grounded? I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
I just go away. I can't. I am not here anymore.
I'm grounded. I'm going to my room.
Yeah. I don't know what I'm talking about right now.
Yeah.
And so like you start having your own like clues about yourself. Like, okay, I am now emotionally reactive. I can't put into place any of this stuff. So I need to peace out for a minute and just bring myself down.
And you kind of have a sense when you are out of control. I mean, I definitely remember the moments when I was, when they say you see red, I mean, I'm not sure I actually saw that color, but I was enraged.
Yeah, totally.
There was no space.
And over what? Like being disrespected, probably.
Yeah.
It was
Absolutely.
ridiculous.
It was
It's
ridiculous.
ridiculous and meaningless.
I know.
Because our kids don't even mean that.
No.
Yeah.
Like they're saying things to get a reaction from us.
And actually, all they really want is comfort from us.
Yes.
That's all they really want.
Yep.
They just show it in the weirdest ways because they're still figuring out how to navigate all this. And they're watching other people do it and screw it up.
Exactly.
And, they're testing that out too.
And really, I think all human beings, all they really want is to just be heard.
And to have some feeling, some sense of control about, that is a lot of the outbursts for kids. I can't even think of a situation where it wasn't about that.
Right.
And, kids, they're so small and they still are very confused. Their brain doesn't even fully develop until they're 20 or 21.
Right. Yep.
So they're very confused. They hit to be 13, especially boys, 13, 14, 15. They start looking like men. They're not men.
Right.
They're not. And even then, I mean, they might need more time.
Yes.
But, it's the sense of control, I think, is really what really spurs that oppositional, defiance, that oppositional behavior. And it's really funny because you talk to adults the same way you talk to children.
Absolutely.
We just give them that little bit of time and we don't escalate and we are just there. And this is in my head, my dialogue in my head is, even if they're screaming at me and calling me names, I'm like, this is about somebody else.
Yeah.
And I just pretend there's like another person named Diana standing here. And I'm like, I don't know what's going on with that person. Yeah. Like, I understand. So, but it really, like, not taking things personal diffuses so many situations. And honestly, I wasn't sure if I should say this, but I'm pretty sure Sean won't hear this. We were upriver today, and we went up to South Fork and kayaked down to Miller. And we got to Miller, and we had dropped his truck off to pick us up about halfway down the bar. And when we got there to drop the truck off, there was nobody there. Well, when we got there to pull out, there was several people there, and they were fishing along the banks. Well, we started to pull our kayaks alongside. I had to go around the fishing poles and pull alongside where the truck was parked. And some guy was yelling something out. I didn't hear him. And then Sean started yelling back.
Oh, no.
No.
Yeah. And then I was like, oh, they're mad. Something just happened.
Oh, no.
And I'd missed everything. Apparently, the guy was like saying, he was upset because we were on the river and he was trying to fish and we scared the fish.
Sure. Yep.
Even though 10 seconds later he was hammering something into the...
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
so we scared his fish and he yelled something.
It was just about ready to bite.
Yeah, it was so close. And so he yelled something to us about you couldn't have picked a better place to pull out. Well, I missed that. Yeah. Sean heard it and was like, and he works on the river and it's public land. And so he yelled something back about it being public land. Well, but then it didn't stop there.
No, of course not.
It just, the yelling back and forth continued. Yeah. And when one stopped, the other one started it back up. And I was like, what is happening right now? I've never, because having been married to a woman for 20 years, that's not something that ever happened.
Yes.
We both would have been like, oh, that's weird, and then walked about our day. Right. That man would have been the only person who had a bad day over it. And so I just think that egos and this sense of control is like something that we need to work on when they're young.
Yeah.
Because then we have not just men. I know there are women out there we don't have a lot of control. Typically, we handle that well. Sometimes we don't, and we push back because we don't have it. And it can cause problems. But I was going to say, before I went into that story that hopefully Sean won't listen to.
It's a great story.
He won't.
It's totally fine. Nobody's going to say anything.
We're not even
about
here.
it. So the adults that we work with, that is a lot of where the oppositional behavior stems from, is their lack of sense of control because, I work with a lot of people who don't have housing. Yeah. And when I'm frustrated and when I'm really frustrated, which lately, I have been, the last several months have been very stressful for me. And I've had to put myself in timeout. And I was homeless before where I didn't have a door that I could shut. I didn't have something that I could, or I like literally couldn't be alone. Like I was in a shelter and there was nowhere for me to be alone. And so you're really just like, that's when, even if, I had a fairly stable childhood. I wouldn't say it was perfect, and there were certainly things I would have loved to have changed, but stable enough that, I had at least a few people that really supported me, that I knew had my back as a kid. And that was enough for me to relax enough to grow into who I was without all of those reactive behaviors. And so even someone like myself, where I have pretty healthy synapses, I think, I still, I have my moments. And when those happen, like I need space. And when you don't have space, you really can become a whole different person because you just spiral.
Absolutely.
And a lot of the folks that we deal with are outside. They're exposed a lot, not just to the elements, but to other people that they don't want. I don't want to interact with people all the time. That's why I don't go to Fred Meyer during the holidays. So imagine if you had to sit in Fred Meyer all day, every day during the holidays.
And people being mean to you because, so much of what
and they don't know your story. And I'm not saying every story is a sob story. I don't think any story is a sob story. I think every story has its own story. And I've never heard one yet where I've been like, oh, you deserve to be out there. I've never heard one. And I've heard a lot.
Yeah, I hear from a lot of parents like, but did you hear that he did this and he did that or she did these things?
But what
I'm like, that is utterly irrelevant. Like, I get it.
Yeah.
In fact, I can tell you a whole long list of behaviors that may be coming up in the next couple of years.
Right.
I'm not worried about any of this. Like, it's much worse than that. So, I've heard much worse than that. I have worked with kids who have much, much worse, more aggressive behaviors, more scary behaviors, like been in worse, social situations, cultural, social situations. And like, again, I keep telling people, like, I've never met a psychopath. Like, I've never met someone who doesn't have a soft underbelly. And I'm talking about kids who threatened to kill me, right? Like 11-year-olds who threatened to kill me with a gun, who lived next to a gang. And like, there's the soft underbelly was so available. It's so right there. The need was so high that if you don't react as if, like, I'm going to show you, or, I'm going to, I don't know, whatever, tough it out of you. I'm going to show I'm tougher than you. If you can actually just be calm and just listen, the soft underbelly's right there. And that's where you have access. There's one kid I have worked with who, I remember the parents were very concerned about the kid being aggressive. And there was a lot of heavy history we see a lot of like correlates with aggressive adult behavior. And so that was a big worry. And I remember saying, like, the focus here is we need to keep this soft underbelly like present and visible to the kid so that they can access it. If they're in this other situation, they need to not show it because that's not safe. In their own knowledge of themselves, that needs to be visible. And so in my work with them, we always went to, again, what I call the primary emotion, but the soft emotions like fear and sadness underneath. And then we talked about, okay, how do you protect yourself in this situation or that situation? Because the soft underbelly is not going to work with, the fish guy or whatever. It's just not going to work. And so finding a way for them to protect that, I lost my worry about this kid long ago, right? Like very briefly into, I almost never had the worry. I had the worry like initially as I was interviewing parents, taking the measures, all of those things. I'm like, I don't know, this could be the one. Absolutely not.
Yeah.
It was the same kind of situation as many of the other kids I had worked with, where you're looking at some really rough trauma with a capital T, and very, very difficult emotional experiences, heightened emotional reactivity, just, innately, their temperament. And then being in situations where they don't know how to respond, they're out of control. And if we give them ways to, number one, understand themselves and not disrespect that softness is in all of us, ways to cherish that parts of themselves, like that's your real self. And this is what I would always tell this kid, like, this is what's going to get you through. Like, never ignore this part, because this is what's going to give you your best life. And we're going to keep you safe. We're going to do all of these things so that you're not showing it, but you keep access to it and you find the people you can share that with, because that's who you really are. And so let's keep who you really are. And the kid did beautifully. The kid did beautifully.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this has been your experience. It's been mine in working with the people I work with, and it's been my experience with my kids. But a lot of those behaviors, really the root of that behavior was like it's kind of hard to like qualify this, but their behaviors were like pieces of themselves, but because they were going through this situation, this is how it was coming out. Yeah. This is how it was showing. Yep. And so removing that, they just blossomed, but their personality showed on both sides. When they were troubled, when they were struggling, their personality showed. When they were, it showed. It just looked different over here. And so some of those behaviors I found in my own kids and some of the people that I work with are actually, they're actually really good coping skills. They're just using them the wrong way oftentimes. And we talk about that in NA a lot and in 12-step programs around, when you're living that trauma, when you're in that trauma, when you're being abused or you're in your addiction or whatever the case may be, those are coping skills. Those are keeping you alive.
Absolutely.
When you don't need them anymore, that's when they become character defects and they start becoming toxic. Right. Before that, they're very useful.
Absolutely.
And so then you get into this situation where you're getting clean and you're now around all these people who are clean and not using, and maybe some of them don't know or don't understand. They're not going to understand those behaviors. And so we see a lot of that in the work we do. A lot of the community at large doesn't understand the behaviors coming from the people we're working with because they haven't, seen
because
that
it's kind of like armor.
It is. It is.
That defense.
Very useful. I mean,
yes.
Think about, those are like, those skills kept them alive.
Exactly.
They kept them from going insane.
Exactly.
So they may look crazy to somebody else, but very useful, very highly adaptable. We're very resilient people.
Yeah. I will say it looks like it's a little bit easier with kids because it's so obvious. It's so much more obvious.
Yeah.
Dude,
yeah.
Come on. come on now. And with adults, like it's a little more subtle, or you're like, oh, that's just their personality.
Yeah.
With kids, you're like, you see it flip, and you're like, okay, I know what's going on here.
Yeah.
So in that way, it's nice to get in when they're kids.
Yes.
And at the same time, you can get in at any time.
Right.
Like you can get in, you just have to see it.
We see it instead of seeing it grow and seeing them like putting on this armor that they don't necessarily need.
Right.
We see them start taking it off, which I imagine you see a lot of that too when you're working with them.
Absolutely.
But we're there when they're fully armored, so we often don't see the beforehand. And so when they start taking that off, not only do we see who they are, but we see that those skills that they had are actually really useful skills. They just need to be used over here.
Yep.
And so like there are people who are kids, teenagers in gangs and in groups of kids that kind of do get in trouble or do have but they are close and they're tight knit, and some of those behaviors that seem really aggressive and seem violent are also they're protecting their people, their peers, and so they're good behaviors. They're just not being used in a healthy way.
So I also supervise graduate students and postdocs who are learning DBT.
Wow.
And with a lot of them, one of the things, and I love doing it, I love mentoring people to come up. And one of the things that we talk about a lot is understanding the function of the behavior. And so I've definitely had students who have worked with different clients and been like, I don't like this behavior is so aggressive or so like abnormal or whatever.
They're getting something out of it.
And they're like, what is the, like, I can't imagine feeling like that. And so having to walk them through like, okay, number one, you're not emotionally reactive.
Right.
So like you're more of a calm person. I'm emotionally reactive. So it's not hard for me to see.
Yeah, right.
But like, let's look at how that person made sense of it.
Yeah.
And so it actually makes complete sense and is actually honorable.
Yeah.
Given their understanding of the world and what it means. Now, did it work out? No, right? Like, is it a problem? Yeah. Does it need to change? Absolutely. Nonetheless, the way they're thinking of it isn't like, I'm going to be an
right. Yeah. That's the hardest part to get through to people.
It's protective and loving and kind and respectful. And like, it's actually quite beautiful from their perspective. And so we just need to shift, number one, how they're seeing like what they're doing, because it doesn't actually end up protecting. It makes things much, much worse. And so we need to help them like see that and then find ways that are effective for them to enact those values, those like really beautiful values of community and protection and like standing up for what you believe in. Like there's beautiful places to do that. Honor that, 100% honor that. So we just really need to see like, what is the function? And so if this kid were doing this for a different reason, we'd be looking at something different. This kid is doing this for this reason. That's easy. Like, that's real easy to get behind. And so really helping the kid themselves see that, because they keep getting the message, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that, blah, 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 blah. And like, yeah, they shouldn't. It's not super helpful in anyone's life. Nonetheless, why they did it matters. We need people to be able to have some compassion for themselves. This is why I did that. Is that okay? No. And it makes sense that I did that for this reason.
Normal. That's why I say this constantly. Normal. That doesn't mean it's okay. It means it's normal.
Right.
And a lot of what they're doing is a normal response to abnormal stimuli.
Sure. Yeah.
And so it's very normal. Yeah. I know, like when we are working with adults again in the same way, it's what they're going through. Like, I wish that we could get a lot of the community to understand that the behaviors that they're having are actually kind of the behaviors that a lot of us would have if we were in the exact same situations. And I know that because I have been in those situations. I've had very similar behaviors. I was a kid. I remember feeling powerless at certain times. I remember, so that's why we're the ones in charge. That's why we're and oftentimes in the work that I do, that's why we're in charge in those spaces. That's why we create those spaces and have really strong policies, and we abide by them, because the adults in those situations need the safety and the structure just as much as the kids do at home. And oftentimes they don't have a home, so that's their home there.
Exactly.
I'm wondering actually if it wouldn't be useful on a show like this to have like a lengthy sort of case study to show what certain behaviors look like and to be able to describe the functions behind those. And like, somebody that you're looking at and like, this is what was going on. This is what it looked like. This is what was going on at this age. This is what it looked like.
Yeah.
And so that so people could actually listen, because we're talking in sort of like theory now, right? And it's harder to apply, even if I'm like, well, my kid or my kid, it's still very broad, very general, and it has to be. If we had a specific case to really help walk through what the specific behaviors can look like and what the function of them is, it could help some of the listeners to see like, okay, we're talking about that level of behavior versus like, this is someone who like yells on the street. No, I'm talking about someone who like, it's attempted murder, for instance. Like, like we're going there. And even then, all of the stuff applies.
That's the thing is you can tell me all day, well, okay, and then what? Like you can give me all the reasons why this isn't going to work for this person or this thing, and it doesn't. I've never seen it not.
Me neither.
I've never seen these things. So keep, can keep saying it. And I'm gonna every time I'm gonna say, okay, and
this is
that
one of the
also
things.
We're clear. We're sure that this that these things will work. That these are the reasons behind this.
And so I run a parenting course for a DBT parenting course that again is for parents or caregivers of kids who are highly emotionally reactive, getting into trouble, like suicide, self-harm, aggression, any of that stuff, and usually also like depression, anxiety. And talking to them, having like a little Q&A session after I've taught them like some piece of understanding the theory of things and saying like, okay, so how does this look in the kid that you are raising or whatever? And they'll bring these situations like, and so we'll talk about validation. Like, well, how do you validate when your kid is yelling at you? Well, that is actually not difficult. So let's figure out the function of that. None of this is difficult.
It's not.
It's all easy peasy.
It sounds difficult.
It's difficult to do when you're angry. So it's straightforward.
That's the key piece is having your own emotional regulation. And it's not always easy to do when it's your own child. And I know I struggle with it myself. I can do it out in the world just fine.
Absolutely.
But the emotional regulation, like outside of my home, in fact, inside of my home up until a couple of years ago, but definitely outside of my home, everybody at work knows that I am an emotional rock. Like I'm good. I'm always good. If I'm at work, I'm good. If I'm not at work, probably don't call me.
Yeah.
So
relatable.
That's
relatable.
Just how it is. But like I'm never upset. I'm good. Like because to me, I'm a very logical person, and this is all so logical that it's so easy for me to just fall back on logic every time. Every time.
That's amazing.
But at home, it is a little bit harder.
So much harder.
Because you're plugged in.
Yeah.
I mean,
and you're just yourself. You're no longer your professional with your professional hat. You're like, oh, it's making me. Yeah, and so I will often try to walk through, try to help parents walk through how do you deal with it when you blow it. How do you deal with it when you're like increasing and I know if I'm at a 4 of anger, I now have about 5 minutes to get out of there, because if I go to a 6, I'm gone.
But this is what I said to my child. It did not work. I want to just leave it at that. It did not work. But this is what I said to my child the other day. This was like maybe 2 months ago. I said, I was like, I am going to lose. I can just feel it. Yep. I can feel them, and I don't lose my ever. So I was like, this is not good, because I don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
And I literally looked at my youngest child and I said, because they kept knocking on the door and I kept saying, I'm in timeout. Stop knocking.
Love it.
I need to not. And so I finally opened the door and I said, this is the last time I'm going to tell you this. And after this, I can't be responsible for my actions. Because I don't think I can think anymore. And then I shut the door, and I kid you not, that kid knocked on the door 2 minutes later.
There it is.
I had just enough time to calm myself down out of the red, and I was like, I'm still not ready yet. And, like I needed more time. But like kids also don't understand that. It's like they have object permanence with time, no sense of time permanence.
Right.
They're like, it's like 30 seconds go by, and they're like, it's been an hour. Why aren't you fine?
Yep. Well, exactly.
But what you were saying earlier, so this is, I think, if I could, if there were like a couple of phrases people could have like instilled into me before I had kids, this would be one that, and I tell Sean this all the time. I tell my staff this all the time. This is not an excuse for making mistakes. However, it's not about what you do. It's about what you do after what you've done. And if you didn't calm the situation as an adult, if your child's escalating and you can't calm yourself down and you made the situation worse, and you were really trying, but you just couldn't, the best thing you can do after that is come back and apologize.
Repair.
You'll see if you've never apologized to your child, you'll definitely see a different reaction the moment you apologize, because it takes all the air out of the room. And they may still yell, they may still, especially if you've never done that before. But like it's taught my kids that not only is it normal that sometimes I don't do the right thing, but that the normal response is to come back and fix it.
Yeah.
One of the things that again, this is aspirational because I'm not always, on it.
Right.
But when
we're perfect at home, Bethany, and I don't make
mostly
mistakes.
always perfect, except for about half the time. So there's that. So when I start to lose it and I'm just like going just like, oh, damn, I'm yelling. I'm like flailing my arms around, right, whatever. We have a rule in our house. I know it's weird, right? We have a rule in our house: when you're angry, we don't touch each other because, like, you don't know how, like, you have no idea what the pressure. You don't know.
We just do that naturally. Everybody's just like, fine, peace out.
Walk away. So what I try to do, and I try to coach my parents to do, and I sometimes do, is if I am yelling, and usually I'm aware that I'm yelling and I've lost it and I'm like, I'm beyond all reason, is I will try to start yelling ridiculous things so that they know that I know that I'm in crazy land. And so I'll be like, I hate the color of these walls. This is stupid. Why are there this many walls in this house? None of this makes any sense. I'm sick of you and you and you fish over there. I am sick of that fish and the attitude. Look at the way she's swimming. So sick of it. Right. And I will just try to bring that in because it allows the kid to like detach a little bit and be like, oh yeah, this is about them.
It's not about them.
This is about my mom losing her mind.
It's you to get the emotional.
Kind of gives you a doorway out.
Yeah.
Too.
And then I'm going to leave and be like, everything is stupid. I hate cars. Right? I don't know. I don't hate cars. I say things that aren't true, right? That are just like blatant falsities, right? Blatantly
brilliant
lies.
It's
well, ridiculousness
because
is
at some point you have to know how ridiculous you're being.
I'm well aware,
which makes you smile.
That means that you're pulling yourself into your thinking part of your brain and out of the fight or flight.
And then when I come back, because I have to repair afterwards, I have to say, dude, that was rough. My bad. Like, I'm sorry. How was it for you? And like talk to him about it and like, okay, what can we do differently? What do I know about myself? Ooh, when I was at a 4, that would be the time for me to leave. If you notice that I'm starting to do you are welcome to say, Mom, get out of there. I'm welcome to yell at you and say, don't you tell me what to do.
Right.
And then we know that I've lost it again.
Right.
Really making sure. And I at this point, I just go and I say, that wasn't about you, right? And he's like, yeah, I know. Like, it's not even a question. He knows it's not about you. And I'm saying, like, you contributed to it. Like, you pissed me off.
Absolutely.
You pissed me off. You did a thing I didn't like, and we can talk about that later.
And that's another key. Separate those two things.
Yes.
Keep them separate.
We'll talk about the logistics of like, okay, how did that not work for our family? Like, what do we do there? And in the moment when I need to say like, ooh, this emotional reaction was not cool because I could have been someone else, same issue, and not had that emotional reaction. So that is about me. It is about my emotions. And so just owning, yep, I blew it. That was rough. I didn't mean it.
It makes us not omnipotent. And I remember I was in one of my psychology classes, actually, and the teacher in there, who I didn't particularly like, but he was a good teacher. I remember he quoted, I think this is from Silence of the Lambs.
Oh, God.
He said, I know, right?
And he quoted all of the lambs. Yep.
Not Hannibal. And maybe it was. I don't know who said it. I think it was that weird guy. He said, what is it? Mother is the word for God on the lips of children. Oh. And it's because, and this is true. And I'm not saying that fathers are not sometimes. I think that just because of how we've been socially conditioned, how our society runs, that is true often. That's why, like, even if your mother's the one that abuses you, like, it's so hard to break away from that. And so I remember sometime in the last 6 months, maybe 6 months ago, I mean, my kids have definitely gone through a lot in the last year and a half. And 6 months ago, they hit another pretty rough patch and, had a little bit more separation between them and their dad than they wanted. And I think my youngest was just really feeling out of control with things and just like wanting to latch onto something and wanting me to maintain control at all times. And because nothing else was, needed me to be perfect. And I couldn't. And I remember one time him just being like I just said, like, I'm not going to do it perfectly all the time. And he said, but you're mom, you're supposed to. And he was crying. He was so upset. And he was like, you're supposed to. And I realized, like, oh, he's just saying I feel so out of control in life. I just need one person that's never out of control ever.
Exactly.
And I can't be. And I couldn't be then. No. But I understood what he wanted. And I I want them to know that I'm not omnipotent, and they don't ever have to be either. And at the point, I think that there's always a point as a child that you realize that about your parents, but there's definitely two different ways that, parents preempt that and then react to that. I think some, typically dads, but some are like, no, I want them to always think I'm omnipotent so that they always listen.
Yes.
Good luck with
and
that.
so when they realize you're not, you fight that. And that's where we see a lot of the separation, a lot of the no contact. And then the parents are like, we don't know why they stopped talking to us.
Right.
But then you, hopefully, like myself, there are parents who are like, no, I'm not perfect. And it's okay. It's okay if I'm not perfect.
In fact, it's better. No one likes perfect people.
And then they're like, oh, she's not perfect.
Yeah.
Sometimes when she says stuff, she's wrong. And I can say, I don't agree with you.
Yeah.
And they do. Like, my staff do that all the time. Like, I'll be sure of something. And I'm like, yeah, and we're going to do this. And then Cindy will be like, actually, I think it this way. And I'm like, oh, you're right.
Yeah.
And my kids have the right to do that too. That doesn't mean I'm going to listen all the time.
No, but
They're not in charge, but they're minors and they're under my watch and all of those things, but they're going to be human beings. They are human beings, but they're going to be like in charge of themselves. And so they need to know how to do that now. And definitely us being perfect is pretending we're perfect is doing them no favors.
I actually remember that when I realized that my father could be wrong. And I was probably
Did he realize
12.
that he could be wrong?
Oh, no, never.
Yeah.
Never.
That's a different dynamic.
He died thinking he was never wrong.
As they do.
Yeah. But it was so obvious to me that he was wrong about this, and there was no arguing with him because he was
right.
You couldn't set yourself up for failure more than bringing that presence to the world that I am right about most things, because
everything.
That
I do tell my kid that though.
That you're right about everything. Yeah, but believe me, he
Well,
knows you're not.
Yeah, I try to tell him, but he doesn't believe me.
Yeah.
My kids definitely, on one hand, think I know everything, and then on the other hand, think I know nothing.
Yes,
very
exactly. But it's a very oppressive environment.
It is.
Sure.
If your parent, particularly your father, it knows everything,
they already
and
know
there's
everything.
no space.
Yeah.
There's no space.
No space for growth.
No, absolutely not. And I remember my mother saying, I stopped because I had just started back to college and I was learning things and it was like fascinating. And I was talking to her about it. I was home for the weekend or home for Christmas or something. And she said, well, I stopped learning, when I graduated from high school.
I'm sorry, what?
Oh.
And I know what now. I know what
first of
she
all,
was
no, you didn't,
trying to
but-
say. But yeah, it was appalling, right? So I'm looking at the clock, guys.
That's like 3.5 minutes. We could shove a whole other. What else are we going to talk about today?
Deep things.
We have a whole 3.5 minutes. This is an amazing conversation. I think that we've had today.
So valuable, I think.
Yeah,
really
and
we didn't even get into some of the meat of different things, which happens often.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, oh, we're going to get through this whole.
No,
I came in one time and I was going to talk about trauma-informed care, and we got through maybe a third of it, and I was like, oh, I'll finish it another time.
No,
we
but
didn't.
But it happens all the time.
Yeah.
And the directions that we go in are always really fascinating to me, and I feel like they come because they need to be said. They're the things that are bubbling up, and they need to be said. They need to be put out there.
I think sometimes I know for myself, sometimes people have never even heard this, but somebody might be listening and be like, yeah, I never thought about if I had an altercation with my child, that we need to have a repair. Like I just assumed, okay, we all cool off, then we come back together and it's fine. You should repair.
Or your kid has to apologize.
Yeah.
Right, if that's the rule, right?
So if you've never heard that before, think about it. Google it. If you're like, I don't know what I would say, Google it.
I promise you it makes a difference.
It makes a huge difference. Because what you're saying when you do that is, I'm a human being and I'm not perfect. And so it's okay for you to not be perfect.
I think sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, again, look, this is normal. This is not okay, and we need to work on this.
Yeah.
But you're normal. Yeah. You're not crazy. You're not I think people need to people, not just kids for sure.
Yeah.
But the people we work with, they need to hear all the time, oh, no, that wasn't crazy at all. Like, that was
you're
normal.
Not
it's
crazy.
not okay. And let's talk about why you did
you're
that.
Not crazy.
Yeah. But you're not crazy.
Yeah.
I think when kids hear you being more human, they have, number one, they grow more trust for you.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so, and they actually have more respect for you.
They do.
Yeah.
They really do.
No, I agree.
Like my kid will come to me.
Yes,
with
mine
issues.
too.
And
things you wouldn't even, I would have never came to my parents for. Things that I would have never even dreamt of coming to any adult
no
for.
space.
Yeah.
There's no space. Yeah. I want to thank you both so much.
Thank you for having this. This is so valuable.
I know. 4 years, we finally made it here.
I know. And it would be great if we could figure out how to do this remotely, right? I mean, the technology is available. So.
I hear that.
I know.
We just don't want to spend a lot of money.
I don't understand technology.
All right. Well, we are now, strictly speaking, out of time.
No.
I know. We've got 42 seconds left. But I do want to thank you both for being on the show and having this great conversation.
I was like, where is this going to go? It was going to be a surprise.
And it doesn't matter because it's always going to be the right place where it goes. So thank you both, and thank you for what you do for the rest of humanity, because it's important, the work you both do. You save lives. Both of you save lives on different sides of the spectrum. I'm Candice Michel, and this is Our Community.